Spring Split champions!
3 rookies prove themselves worthy of the top 4 in the EU LCS.
A double kill from Perks! This guy is a madman! He can do it! Oh, Memento! You beautiful man!
Guess the Quadra gotta be a pacer for Kobe!
It's time to find out who will rise. This is the EU LCS. Welcome back to Berlin, Germany, and the second day of the EU LCS Summer Semifinals. Today, Misfits Gaming and Fnatic will square off to decide who will be our final finalist in Madrid next week. We will see if Hansama and the team can create one other upset and take down the reigning champions. I'm Eefje Shocksuporter. This is Ready Check, and I am going to take you through what happened yesterday in the EU LCS. Schalke 04, who didn't even make playoffs in spring, are ready for their first ever final as they took down Vitality 3-1. Now, I want to look at some key players from their win, starting with their new AD carry superstar Upset. In the first game of the series, he made a statement on Ezreal. He dealt 1,505 damage per minute, the third highest number recorded in the EU LCS since we started tracking the stat. He came in with a bang, and he's proven that he can perform under the pressure of playoffs. But next Sunday, though, he will face his toughest challenge yet, as he goes up against either Reckless or Hansama in his first EU LCS final. Next thing we want to highlight on Schalke is Nukeduck. He started his career back in 2013 when he went all the way to the final. Spoilers, he lost. But now, 5 years later, he is back at the top of Europe as he pulled out even more unique picks from his champion pool. For instance, his awesome Irelia in Game 2. The fish show might have jumped off, but the Year of the Duck hype train keeps on going. Finally, we talked so much about Kikis and how he was the key to Vitality's success. However, it was amazing who came out on top as he shut down Vitality's star player. He managed to control the early aggression Kikis and Vitality are known for, and he came up huge in the deciding team fight around the Baron. It has been a great return to the EU LCS for Amazing, and should he and Schalke win next Sunday, he will become the first player in history to win both an EU and NA LCS title. History is already made and is about to be made. And with that, I'd like to also welcome my fellow analysts, Christy Ender Frierson and Jonas Cold Anderson. Guys, yesterday was awesome from the side of Schalke. They just came out swimming. Amazing was rightfully very emotional after that huge game.
It was so incredible because we knew jungle was going to be such a pivotal role, but Amazing comes in after all the trials and tribulations he's had in his career, shows up big time on that stage and gets emotional, very justly so.
And you know, the emotions were not only on the side of Schalke, it was also on the side of Vitality. We saw after the game the coach of the coach of Schalke going to Attila and cheer for him afterwards. So a lot of emotions on the stage, and you could really feel that this game really mattered.
Yeah, I'm glad that you mentioned it. For Amazing, it was the idea of like the veteran player who came in and fought his way back to the top. But on the other side, for a lot of the rookies coming into 2018 of Vitality, it was a very, very tough loss. As you said, Andre went over to comfort his ex-Giants teammate Attila after those final moments, but you know, they got to get back on there because they have to perform in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, you know, this was a heartbreaking loss for Attila because he was trying to prove something himself too, trying to put himself above Upset in that rookie AD carry tier list, and he performed so wonderfully on the Draven, on the Varus, really doing good things, but just wasn't quite enough to topple Schalke, who came out to play.
I talked to him after and he said, it's just so hard. This was our year. It seemed like we were improving. Kikis came in and I was so looking forward to play the final in Madrid as I used to play for Giants. It's kind of my second home away from home. But Attila, to that I say, you guys are playing in the third place decider next Saturday. This is where you have to get everything back together and show that you are worth, because it can be so important for your road to Worlds.
And for them, honestly, all their eyes should be on the Worlds. You know, they still have the ability to go to Worlds, and I think for a squad like Vitality that came in at the start of the year without too much, honestly, if they can go to Worlds, this is a huge upset for me at least.
That it is. Well, we'll take a look at how exactly they can get to Worlds with Drakos, who's standing by with the latest updates.
Thank you very much, Shox. I think it's good to start on Vitality, even after what was a crushing defeat yesterday. They do still have a chance to secure that second seed. Now, if Fnatic win today and Vitality triumph over Misfits in the third place decider, they will be Europe's second seed at Worlds. So all hope is not lost. Third place is still important, but it does hinge on Fnatic winning today. Similar, Schalke are also looking for Fnatic to win, but in the opposite vein, they very much need Vitality to lose. In the event that Vitality get fourth place, Fnatic get first, and Misfits get third, Schalke will be your second seed. Now, while both of yesterday's teams have some complex scenarios, today's teams, Misfits and Fnatic, have the hardest, most complex roads imaginable when it comes to looking at how they can secure Worlds. Let's look at Fnatic first. Oh, wait. The only way Fnatic can actually get second seed at this point is by losing. They have so many points that no matter where they finish at this stage, they get second seed. So the only choices for Fnatic are win the split or lose anywhere else and grab that second seed. That is the road to Worlds for Fnatic, no matter what, the beauty of locking. On the opposite side for Misfits, they can, of course, get first seed by winning the split or third seed by taking down the gauntlet. But sadly for them, they can't actually get second seed. Now, losing to Fnatic means they can't get enough points, and beating Fnatic immediately locks Fnatic into the second seed, which is kind of the ultimate want moment when you look at playoffs and esports. Of course, it's not just Misfits, though, that have a shot in the gauntlet. Any playoff team that cannot secure first or second seed will be fighting for Europe's last spot at Worlds between the 14th and 16th of September. So keep your eye out for that. In the meantime, back to you, Shox.
Thank you so much, Drakos. We will be keeping an eye on that because it's so important to find out who of Europe will go to Worlds. Now, though, for something different, before we forget, we need to put Cold on the spot. It is his second appearance on Ready Check, and it is time to put Cold in our DX Racer hot seat. However, I think for the occasion, it is more appropriate if it is called the Cold Seat. That's a pun.
Wait a second, it's getting chilly in here, Shox.
We'll fire off questions like we see the snow dwindling down. Get your mittens, get your hats, get your scarves, and let's get ready. We'll start with an easy one from a cold country. What was it like growing up in Sweden?
Terrible.
Just kidding, you are of course from Denmark, so that leads me to, who is your favorite Danish colleague?
Definitely not the Fisher, but I don't really have anyone else to choose from, so the Fisher, maybe?
All right.
Now, who do you think is the best jungler in the ULCS?
Obviously, I cannot choose myself, but out of this, I think Broxa.
Are you buffer than Vedius?
Debatable. To you guys out there that hasn't seen Vedius, he is quite a gentleman and a strong guy. So, but probably me, yeah.
But out of the players in the ULCS, are you the buffest?
It's a hard one. I think there are definitely some people that can challenge me, but until I've seen them, I will have to choose myself.
Very meaningful questions here. Finally, how does it feel going into your second straight final next week?
Impressive. I'm honestly quite impressed by myself. You know, not a lot of people can do what I do. So. Thumbs up to myself.
You know what? I like that you took that with a smile. Of course, you'll be with us as an analyst in Madrid for the second straight time. Thank you. You passed with flying colors. And we just want to congratulate you with how you've done on the broadcast so far, also yesterday. But we do want to look at one specific highlight once more, as it was one to remember from yesterday.
And so I just want to point out, with the information given, what we can look at. Where's the minimap?
This is the minimap, Cold. You have the minimap. So talk me through some of the information that he does have.
Exactly. So we know he's stronger in the 1v1.
Come on, what happened?
Where's the mini-map?
To my defense, usually the minimap is a mini-map.
Yeah.
You know, it says it all. You know, it's supposed to be in the bottom corner. But yeah, so obviously, production mistake, you know, not my mistake. I don't do mistakes.
That is the last thing you can say when you come on a show. Oh my gosh. We're going to make the height difference even worse now. We're going to change the camera angle.
Yeah.
You know, a wise man once told me that it's not the size that matters.
It is the knowledge that you bring out as an analyst. I think I can agree. So let's take a look at what your analysis is on the All-Pro team with the EULCS Summer Finals coming up. We did just announce the All-Pro team for the split. As a reminder, this was voted to by teams, by journalists, by the broadcast team, by the production, so a lot of voices together, and they came to this conclusion. First up, 3 Fnatic players, Fnatic and friends.
Yeah, it turns out when you're the best team in Europe during the regular season, a lot of your players are probably the best in their role too. So I think Caps is the most obvious one on this list, but Brox and Hylissang were so instrumental in getting him ahead and getting Fnatic the wins.
And we also see they have so many more points than the other guys. And we see a guy like, for example, Wonder and Upset having less points, which means that there is probably more conflict of who's actually the top. I think it's important to point out some of the people that challenge them, like in the top lane, for example, Soas. And I think a guy like Carboshed had strong splits, and they were definitely challenging Wonder to split.
Just as a reminder, this is regular season all-pro teams, so you might think, well, Upset absolutely killed it in the playoffs, so that's why he's there. He has actually also voted that for his regular season performance, which is still accurate. Is there anything you guys vehemently disagree with?
Well, I think Wonder is a tough one for me. I really thought Cabochard was the best top laner in the ULCS, not just his laning stats, but also playing such a pivotal role in engaging for his team. And also with Vitality, Kikis coming into the jungle was so instrumental in just changing that team and making them have that fantastic run that went all the way up until yesterday.
That is true. Finally, though, when we look at the players, Fnatic is playing Misfits today in this upcoming heated semi-final. Should we be worried as Misfits fans if there's no Misfits?
I mean, at a first glance, yes, but if you look a little deeper, no. I think their bottom lane was actually on the second all-pro team. So Mickey X and Hansama are such a pivotal, play such a pivotal role in that team, and I think are going to be a challenge for Fnatic to face again.
I also think a guy like Maxwell must be just below Broxa in the standings. So even though they're not #1, they should be just below, and I think they can easily challenge. I think this just shows the kind of split we have had where Caps has been the star facilitated by Broxa and Hylissang, and it makes sense.
Well, we're putting the spotlight on Hylissang during the match today. You can watch his POV stream on twitch.tv/RiotGames2, so you can take a look at everything that happens in that bottom lane. Now, almost...
Mid lane.
Yes, bottom lane, mid lane. I see what you did there. I didn't get that. But after almost 11 weeks of action, we mentioned here already, Upset has been playing very well, but also Reckless and Hansama, they are the last remaining AD carries. Now, given that this role has seen so many changes this split, I do want to take a look at their key picks for the upcoming series and just think about the fact that as a meta, we've now arrived back in AD carry land.
Yeah, and I think the interesting part about the ADCs is that that we have left is that they play different styles. We have the more aggressive laning dominant style that Hansama brings with the likes of the Drave and the Killista, this kind of stuff, and on the other side more scaling on the side of Upset and Reckless. So very different styles we have to work with.
And then we go to Upset first, the guy who's been doing great in the playoffs so far. On is Ezreal first and foremost.
Yeah, exactly. I wanted to pick out sort of 2 champions for each of these players that have been really good. One sort of consistent and then one standout pick. So the consistent one for Upset has been Ezreal. In the playoffs, in the regular season, he's been very strong on this champion come team fights. He's one of those players that is actually willing to jump forward with the Arcane Shift and look for big plays. And the Kai'Sa as well fits into the Schalke style of scaling a little bit longer when they're given the opportunity so he can show off in the team fight.
When we look at a player than Hansama, then you said it already, this is a guy that likes to go ham when it comes to the lane. He likes to go all in and get his advantages through the champions he picks together with Mickey in the bottom lane.
Definitely, and I mean he is probably the core guy on the Misfits team because the way Misfit has been succeeding lately is through the bottom lane, and with his early aggression in the lane, he is facilitated by his teammates, and it looks really well when he plays these aggressive champions because not only does he get ahead, but he also brings his team ahead, and that is really the way Misfit wants to play the game.
And the Draven really is that signature pick for him. He was the first one to bring it back all the way back in week 1, I believe. Just so willing to dominate on that champion, but the Varus as well gives him some more scaling options and enables his team to find these plays around the bottom lane with that engage from the ultimate.
So he does have kind of 2 styles he can go to when he plays in those games. Finally, Reckless, and that is also his opponent tonight. Reckless will be starting for Fnatic. I always associate Reckless with the late game carries, the hyper carry.
Right, but he does have 2 options. I think he has played the Ezreal twice this split since his return, and in those games, he's been paired up with something like Hylissang's Pike, so he plays a more defensive role on the back foot where he lets his support actually go and roam, whereas I've been looking at his solo queue history, he has been spamming the Tristana so much on that champion, and I really think today we're going to see Fnatic go for some more late game scaling with a pick such as that.
And when we talk with pro players about Reckless specifically, it's not always that, you know, this guy just goes out and just beats you in lane. It's more so that it's so hard to beat him in the lane because he always somehow managed to go even in CS and stay relevant in the game. And that is really, from my perspective, that's what describes Reckless as a player. Like, always so consistently at a high level.
I think some top 80 carries obviously fell out as the playoffs went on, but I'm quite happy with the playing field we have, and I will definitively be able to say after the final who the strongest 80 carry in Europe is. That went through kind of all of it, through the mages. Hansama kept playing 80 carries, Upset did both. Reckless kind of zoned out for a little bit, so we'll see.
He played like some Janna, some Carmen here. Those are the dark days of Reckless that we really don't want to remember, but they're definitely part of the Fnatic
Honestly,
story.
a lot of respect towards Upset for being able to play both styles, you know, where the others didn't really try it. We saw, I think, one game from Hansama on
Yeah,
Vladimir.
that's another one that we really don't want to talk about.
Not too much, not too much. So, and Reckless, I don't know, maybe, yeah. He
They
probably
were all-
played it in solo queue, but
But now
not so
they're
much
all
on Rift.
back in their comfort zone, which is really, really exciting when it comes to the games. Also today, and when we take a look at today's action, we have the 6-time EU LCS champions Fnatic taking on Misfits. Now, Fnatic coming into this year hadn't won a title since 2015, but they returned to the top of Europe, looking to make their second straight final. They obviously just won in Copenhagen, but coming into the year, they had that lineup with Caps and Reckless being really at the core of their performances.
Yeah, and for majority of the time with Soa as well. They looked very unbeatable, honestly, in the spring split. They just cruised through the playoffs, and they looked like the team to beat, even though they actually had to swap in Bipo for the playoffs with Soa's injury. So with the two carries, Caps, led by Caps and Reckless, they were pretty much the guys that just looked like the two strongest carries in the league. So it was hard for other teams to challenge them.
Yeah,
And-
they beat G2 there. Sorry,
Yeah, I know.
beat
Like
G2
in those
Copenhagen.
finals too, it was really Reckless that
Yeah.
stood up. But then there was this sort of shift for Fnatic where you go to MSI and then all of a sudden the very best mid laner in the tournament is actually Caps, and Reckless isn't quite at that same level of performance. Then coming into summer, Caps maintains that very, very high level and actually has to be the solo carry for this team, with the rest of the team putting so many resources into him to make sure he can.
I just want to
step
say
up and carry.
it's actually a completely different Fnatic we have here in Summer Split, because with Reckless out of the lineup, it really was the Cap show, honestly, and very much facilitated by his teammates with Broxah and Hylissang constantly roaming into mid lane. So not only was he winning his lane, he was also using his teammates to just completely destroy the other mid laner. And I think that really is the statement that Fnatic was doing through this whole
Yeah, everyone was playing towards Caps, and with that, they got a 13-5 record in the regular season. They ended first, and now we see them for the first time in the playoffs in the semifinals. Fnatic want to solidify their legacy as the best team in EU LCS history, and this is also the first time that we will see kind of the Reckless Bwipo in action starting, and the ability to change that out throughout a best-of-5. I think the ability with Soaz and Bwipo was always there, but now they seem to have another ace up their sleeve.
So I'm actually super excited about this, because I think it's the first time in EULCS history that we have a roster that has 6 men that actually are ready to plug and play and can play different styles. So I think it's very scary to go up against Fnatic, because they have this ability to adapt to a certain situation that other teams cannot do. So I'm just excited to see how they utilize it. I think they have a strong coaching staff that knows how to plug and play these players. So I'm just excited to see how they're going to utilize it.
Yeah, and talking of that coaching staff earlier today, Dracos, he also talked to Fnatic's team director, Youngbuck. Let's see what he had to say.
Thank you very much, Shox. I am joined with Fnatic's Director of Esports, Youngbuck. Now, Youngbuck, I want to know, coming into this, Fnatic has been one of the few teams actively using the substitute slot, swapping players in and out. How does this benefit you guys coming into a best-of-5?
So first of all, we have 3 players with different champion pools, so we can adjust throughout the series if we feel like we need to shake things up a bit. I also think that now that we're playing Reckless again, we've only played him a few times in the spring split, so Misfits is probably trying to prepare for him, but they don't have the ability to get much of a read on him because he's only played just a few games. So I think in terms of preparation, we have a big advantage because we have a lot of versatility, and also it's really hard for Misfits to read what we're actually going to draft.
Interesting to see how that works out for you. Now, on the subject of Misfits, your opponents, I think a lot of people were surprised when they looked so dominant against G2 with their 3-0 finish in the quarterfinals. What was your take on the 3-0 win?
Yeah, I was just as surprised. I figured that the spring split and the summer split, regular split, Misfits would show up again, but they just won in such a dominant fashion, and we haven't practiced against them for a while, so we don't know which Misfits is going to show up. If it's still the same Misfits, and if it was just G2 really slumping, or if this Misfits is actually a threat to us.
Final question. I'm curious, you've now opted to start with Bwipo in the top lane in your first game and Reckless in the AD carry position from what you guys tweeted out on Twitter last night. Can you give me any insight into why you've opted to start with this roster?
We have a specific draft in place, and we're going to pick a specific top lane champion that we think Bwipo is better with. But if we need to, we'll definitely adjust throughout the series.
I appreciate you giving me as much information as you can without giving anything away. Thank you for your time, Yumba. Good luck on the series. Back to you at the desk, Jocks.
Fantastic. What I took away from that is that Fnatic and Youngbuck are not underestimating Misfits by any means, and that they have some tricks up their sleeve. But I'm happy that they're going in this knowing that this is going to be a very tough opponent.
Yeah, and this Misfits squad is scary. I think Fnatic, you are a little bit nervous because you don't know fully what to expect. This is a Misfits team that actually beat Fnatic earlier on in the split.
And in the semifinals
And in the semifinals last year. It is pretty crazy because they are back on that start of the split form, and I think are going to be a really tough opponent today.
Yeah, if we take a step back, sorry to Barjam, but I'd just like to acknowledge what happened with Misfits this year. The fact that they came into 2018, they had a relatively new roster. They had the new mid laner in Senkux. They had Mickey X in the bottom lane, but it really all started gelling in summer.
Definitely. I mean, I think at the start of the summer split, they really found the identity that worked for them, playing through the bot lane, playing strong bot lanes, and just enabling them with the team. And I think that really made it clear to us what Misfits wants to do in game. And I think even though they dipped a bit throughout the split, I think it's clear to see that they went back to what worked for them from the start, and this is where they will shine.
And the important thing, too, is that you had those new players, Senkux and Mickey X, really filling the shoes of their predecessors. All of a sudden, Senkux actually winning mid lanes really, really hard, and Mickey X is in the bottom lane making huge plays that are pretty reminiscent of Ignar on champions like the Rakan, finding those insane engages that made up all the highlight reels of the first 5 weeks.
Yeah, and that's just it. In the first 5 weeks, they were great 9-0. They dipped at the end of the split, but they picked it back up coming into quarterfinals. And I think the reason that they dipped at the end of the split is why many of us underestimated them going into G2 Esports. And Cold, you touched on it. They went back to what works for them.
Exactly. I mean, in the later stages of the split, they tried to play through top, they tried to play through mid, but it really didn't work out for them. So they went back to what worked for them in the start, which is playing through a strong bot lane. I think what we learned from the G2 series is that they were well prepared, they had a plan, and they executed very, very well. I think on the other side, G2 looked like a weak team, but I mean, that's always easy to say when you just beat them 3-0. But props to Misfits for finding out a style that works for them and just keep doing it, you know?
And I mean, even though G2, you can say, yes, they underperformed, Misfits dominated. They looked like they're in that same form from the start of the split, absolutely dominating on some signature picks. And going up against Fnatic today, people think of them as an underdog, but I really don't think so anymore.
Well, even if you look at this, you know, they were a very good early game team in the beginning of the split, and they reinforced that when they came into the quarterfinals. So we'll see if they're trying to replicate that. We also know that we need to give them props for the best of 5 prowess. Misfits seem to have, with Hussein Muzi and the rest of the staff, people that know what to do coming into best of 5s, and they have a tough challenge ahead of them as they go up against Fnatic. However, they've beaten Fnatic 3 times already in 2018. Misfits is the only team in the EULCS to have a positive record against Fnatic this year. So I know you shouldn't read into that too much, but it is good. They can learn from those wins.
Yeah, they absolutely can. And again, this is a Misfits team that was sort of slumping in spring, didn't make playoffs, still beat Fnatic twice, taking it to super, super late games against them. So even though we have an idea of Misfits right now, it does give you some good hope thinking of how they can be flexible in these past years.
And I think this is exactly why we are so excited for the matchup today, because if you look back at spring, Reckless said himself that if there was one team he didn't want to meet in a best of 5, it is Misfits. So I think if there's ever a time for Misfits to show up in a best of 5, today is the day, and I hope they will show up.
Today is the day, and they can take into account that they are good in best of 5s in preparation, and they are going to need it because Fnatic have so many ways to attack you. In this case, Misfits, because they can run different compositions according to who they decide to start on the Rift.
Right, so I went through and found 3 different compositions that I think we could actually see Fnatic pull out today. And we talk a lot about this team having a 6-man roster. I think it's a 7-man roster because of the versatility you get from Bwipo. Starting off at the top, this is actually a comp they ran back towards the start of the the split with Soaz in the top lane and Bwipo down bottom. And the key thing to note, the biggest difference you get with Bwipo in the bottom lane is aggression. Swain and Pyke is looking for kills, looking for roams, and a lot of early skirmishing, which is something you don't really see out of Reckless when he's in the roster.
Also, this is a perfect example of a composition that just completely enables Caps in the mid lane, because Pyke and Trundle probably, I don't know exactly the game, but they probably went into the mid
They
lane
went mid lane like
at least 100, yeah, at least 100
Pyke was
times.
split pushing, I believe. Was it that
Eventually,
game?
like, you get Baron buff,
Yeah.
it's crazy.
Was it that game? The second example you wanted to show is when Reckless and Fnatic play together in Week 9, where we see still a good champion for Caps, but also a bit of a different composition bottom lane.
Yeah, and this is with Bwipo in the top lane, Reckless down bottom. And again, you're seeing Marksman, which is the big change when you bring in Reckless. But still, it's about enabling Caps, really. There were a lot of roams from Hillisang on the Rakan. Broxa was always mid on the Sejuani. So it still shows that while Reckless can be in the roster, they still prefer to play through their superstar mid laner.
Definitely, yeah. But I do also think that when you play Xayah Rakan, it's not as much about roaming. It's more about actually facilitating the Xayah as well and playing as the duo. So it's not as much focus on Caps, but they still have the tools now to do that.
Final comp is something we've not seen yet, I believe, but this is something you'd like to see them try?
Exactly, because Tristana, I'm telling you, and I think that Tristana Braum is actually a really solid lane they could take up against Misfits today. It's a lot of safety, and all you have to do is really go even, hold on to your tower as long as possible, and play for the late game. Reckless is a player that will dominate in the 5v5s, get pentakills all over you in big, big moments, and Tristana is his signature champion to be able to do that.
And when I see the last one, it reminds me of one thing, and that is the spring split Fnatic in the playoffs. Tanks top, tanks jungle, carries in mid lane, carries on the ADC position, and I think that is really the Fnatic we know.
Yeah, and that is also the legacy they're working with. They did fantastically in spring, and everyone wants to beat them because they are at the top of the food pile here in the EU LCS. And a big part of that is their Danish superstar Caps in the mid lane. I feel due to the story of Reckless coming back, sometimes we haven't talked as much about this guy, but I think it's important to recognize that through Funnel, through Wukong mid, through LeBlanc, through Yasuo, this guy has been the best mid laner in EU LCS in 2018.
And it's just his own signature performance and the team that just enables him to be so dominant on these picks. You see him get a lot of counter picks, stuff like the Wukong mid. Again, this was the turn for Misfits right here when Caps locked in the Wukong, and then Misfits lost the majority of their games in the second half of the split.
And million-dollar question, what can Senkux do to contain him? Similarly as they played versus G2, or what's the plan?
So I think you cannot underestimate Senkux from playing with him himself. If I want to take a little bit back in memory lane, if you go back to 2016 when he played at the world stage, he played against the likes of Bjergsen, the likes of Crown, the likes of Xiaohu, and he did completely fine. He was actually having some of the best games of his career. If you go just 1 year back to the quarterfinals in Summer Split, where Splice had the series against G2, which I hope we all remember because it was a really, really close series, Senkux was performing out of the world. He probably had the best series he has ever played. So I don't think we can underestimate him. And when the pressure is on, this guy will perform. So I think as much as we can say about Caps, that he has been the best player in the league in this split, in my opinion. I don't think we should underestimate.
Definitely won't, but we need to look at a couple of other players on Misfits as well who brought them to the semifinals, and I want to look at the bottom lane. Hans Sama versus Reckless. Hans Sama has got some fantastic moments in the beginning of the split, including when he actually destroyed Fnatic and Janna for Reckless
Yeah, it's like
on Draven.
we got cheated with that matchup because Reckless was playing a support. It was crazy, but Hans Sama looked so dominant in that game and looked so dominant throughout the start of the split. And even when Misfits sort of fell down a bit, he was still getting 2v2 kills in lane right next to Mickey X. So it is such a powerful player that you have to watch out for.
That is true, and I think this is how we want to reinforce the fact that Misfits shouldn't be considered the biggest underdogs here. They have had some star performances from Hans Sama, from Mickey. We also had a great performance from Alphari in quarterfinals, what nobody expected. So they are definitely in this with a possibility to win it. But Ender, I know you're a big fan of them. What are the keys to victory here for Misfits?
So the keys to victory, very similar actually to their match up against G2, where they were against the best laning mid laner in the ULCS. Now they're against the best all-around mid laner. So don't die mid. We're going to see Senkux pick stuff like the TF, like the Rise, sustain through lane, don't die to the roams, and then pick a winning bot lane matchup that Hansama can carry with and play through them to shut down Reckless and get Hansama to a point where he can carry.
All right, and then on the other side, the favorites in this matchup, Fnatic, the guys who want their second straight final, what are their win conditions, Cole?
I think it's very clear they need to control the Misfits early game, especially in the bottom side of the map. And all of this comes down through lane priorities and using this to slow down the pace of the game. And other than that, just utilize the fact that you have the two best carries, in my opinion, on the Rift today in Reckless and Caps. So I think these two guys, if you give them resources, they will carry you.
Absolutely huge matchup on the road to the finals in Madrid. I want to know about your predictions. I personally voted for Fnatic 3-2. I think Misfits can have what it takes, but I don't know if they're as consistent as Caps and Reckless.
Look, we're going 5 games, but my faith is in Misfits here. They showed such good stuff against G2, and I think they're coming out with that again today.
Cold.
I mean, I said it just before. I think it would be stupid to me to vote against Fnatic because anything just tells me that Fnatic is going to win today.
Well, the fans at home, they took a stand and they voted for Misfits, which I think is one of the only times in history that Fnatic didn't win the fan vote. I don't know what that means, but it might mean that Misfits can surprise us once again. They've did it before, they can look to do it again, and they look to pull off another upset as they face off against a team that has dominated the EU LCS in 2018, Fnatic.